Today I'd like to talk about stages of change in recovery from addiction. In recovery work, one helpful and universally respected model is referred to simply as the stages of change. What I'd like to do today is to summarize each of these stages and provide practical examples of each. First, though, I want to talk about change in general and perhaps some of the limitations of applying theories about stages to life, specifically the process of recovery. I think we all know that change rarely occurs in some kind of straight line from point A to point B. Not only do our lives progress, what I would say, non-linearly, but even talking about our lives in terms of lines or stages may be problematic unto itself. That is to say, much of our life journey entails moving in something other than straight lines. I tend to think of it in terms of perhaps moving in circles or possibly looking at our lives moving in spirals. We cycle through our lives, through the seasons of our lives, sometimes even coming full circle where we come back to the beginning again, only to realize with further kind of self-reflection that we're experiencing where we started from a different perspective because it's renewed by whatever we've been through since the last time we were at this point in our lives. In this way of looking at it, the beginning is really not the beginning. So yes, we do circle back in our lives, but never exactly to the same spot from which we began. Hopefully we're informed by new learnings, certainly by our failures, and hopefully creative solutions to the stuck places. So in this context then, let me talk about stages of change, just as long as we're clear that we're not wanting to reduce anyone's mind or life to any particular theory, including a theory of stages. The first stage that's discussed in this model is the stage of pre-contemplation. In pre-contemplation, we're typically dominated by denial of having any problem. Let me ask you, who has never found him or herself in need of some fundamental change? It could be in a behavior or an attitude. And often at this stage, it comes to our attention because somebody else is alarmed or concerned. And yet we ourselves might at that moment have zero willingness or even capacity to acknowledge that there is in fact a problem. This would be an example of pre-contemplation. It signifies that I'm not even ready yet to contemplate any kind of change in my life because there's not a problem really. The second stage represents the shift to acknowledging that we do have a problem, and this is, as you might imagine, this is referred to as contemplation. And even though there's an acknowledgement here of there being a problem, there's not yet necessarily the willingness to actually change. That comes later. So typically, even though there's an acknowledgement of there being a problem, there's oftentimes a huge amount of ambivalence about the idea of changing at all. That moves us towards the third stage, and that's preparation. Here now there's the beginning of an inner determination to change. The problem is on the table. The key issue here is initiating a plan or a strategy for making positive change. The fourth stage then is action. This is where change is actually put into action. It can be a very heady time where hopes run high. Sometimes in the recovery literature it's referred to as the pink cloud, the time of great excitement because there's movement. I have to say also, this can also be a time where it risks the feeling of being overwhelmed. Once the addict in recovery realizes the immensity of what he or she is up against, it can be quite ominous. Once action has been taken and let's say the addictive behaviors have remitted, at least for a time, then we're into the next stage, which would be the fifth stage or the maintenance stage. Here the focus is on sustaining or maintaining sobriety. This is the period of time in which the strategies might be focused on managing triggers, various triggers to addiction, even learning from possible relapses. Let me say a word about relapse. In this stage of maintenance, relapse may invite the reinstitution of previous stages, going back and redoing the previous stages, and getting the addict back on track. Hopefully, in the spirit of our conversation about circles and spirals, hopefully the addict is back on track, maybe a bit wiser now, and just a bit further up the spiral, let's say, in terms of self-awareness and resilience to future stressors. Thank you.